So who am I? My name's Zoe Walters. I'm currently the Group HRD for Condé Nast. And as Charlotte said, and thank you very much for inviting me along, I have had a very privileged career. I've been in HR for about 20 years, and I was a croupier on a cruise ship. How does that work that you become in HR? They're not so dissimilar, actually. You're servicing the public. You have to remain calm and tolerant at all times, even when they want to throw ashtrays at you, when they're losing a lot of money. Actually, there's a lot of similarities. So my last job I'm going to focus on is that I've been with Adidas. I've lived around the world. I've been in beautiful places like Shanghai, Copenhagen, New York, and London. It's been amazing. And I've settled back here because I am from here and I feel the need to come back to my roots. My parents are getting older, you know, and I miss family, and it's a really important connection. So Carl, I was introduced to Carl. We were talking about New York and the fierceness of the place. And it is a great place, but it's got no, if you're not from there, it can be a very lonely place too. So I'm back home. So in addition to being in HR, I've been learning for the last 6 years. I'm a forever learner. I think I should wear L plates all the time. I'm addicted to learning. I've been doing a master's in psychology because I thought when I grew up I wanted to be a psychologist. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm there and I no longer want to be a psychologist. Anyway, another factor. I've been doing coaching because I think it's an enormous benefit to be a coach in the HR community, and I'll tell you why about that as we go into more digital. And for Adidas, I joined them. They enticed me from Diesel, which are a very rebellious brand. I was working in New York, and they said, please come and work for us because we want to put you in an incubator and see what you're made of. And I was like, ooh, this sounds a bit interesting. Let's go and find out what that means. So there was a few of us handpicked from different brands, and we went to Adidas and they gave us some tasks and we hid away from the world. And what that eventually meant was that I was given a lovely black box, said, you now lead digital for Adidas. Go. Okay, right, what does that look like? So my job when I started Adidas was very much around org design, what's the capability, what is digital, what's digital for Adidas, who do we need, what do we need? And it was just collaborating with the business at first. Now, when I left in March, my job was much more about delivery and execution and become a lot more stabilised and normal. So I'm going to kind of touch on why I think coaching is really important going in the digital space, because a coaching style is much more in a collaborative fashion. When we talk about servant leadership, has anybody heard the label servant leadership? I'm sure I see some nods. I don't like the terminology, but I think it describes that at the party, you're the last one to eat and drink. You give your service and you help others on their journey to enable and to unlock any roadblocks that they have. So the coaching really, it became evident for me that I needed to influence and coach rather than tell and instruct. And so that journey with Adidas, while I didn't technically learn anything holistically, my emotional intelligence grew massively. Because I really needed to be a business partner. I needed to step up to the plate and say, what do you need and how can I make it happen for you? So what is digital? Does anyone work in digital space here? Anyone specifically work? Fantastic. So we've got some people. Thank you for making yourself known. What is digital is really personal to the organisation that you work in, because I'm going to tell you a secret. Digital is nothing more than a mindset and an attitude and a way of doing things. It's not a phone device, it's not an Android, and it's certainly not a PC. Digital is an enabler, and basically Adidas, the net sales for e-com needed to be increased. So the way to do that was have direct relationships with consumers. Consumer obsession, consumer obsession, consumer obsession. That was all that was drummed into us. And what that led to was then how we operate. What that means for HR is I didn't know the ramifications of that, and I learnt that over a 2-year period. What that means for HR, speed. Speed to be able to react to the business, to be able to service the consumer. That's all it means. How do we become more nimble and agile in the way that we structure ourselves and the way that we do our work every single day? The business is going to keep throwing and churning, and we talk about this VUCA world that we live in, which is a beautiful world, but it does demand us to be really, we have to be resilient to change fatigue. And this is one of the muscles that I think we have to get in HR, is that we can no longer be in the space, well, I certainly couldn't be at Adidas, where they would instruct me to do something, they be in the business, and I just give them what they want. There was a much more consultative approach, laying foundations, and if any of you work with agile methodology, you'll know that it's very robust and it's very rigid. There's no let's do what we want. But I think that there's this misconception that digital and agile is just doing what you want, when you want, and how you want, and that's really not the case. So we defined what agile and digital means for Adidas, and of course, as I've gone into my new role, I'm looking at what that means for Condé Nast, and I'll come on to that slightly. So what digital isn't is about being rigid, is about HR having this traditional, let's say, mindset around being reactive to the business. There's a lot more proactivity that's needed, and the pace that's demanded to react and be proactive is being challenged constantly. And I don't know how it touches all of you, but if it hasn't already, it's going to, because technology and digital is just going to get faster, and it's going to demand more and more and more on HR. So my advice is kind of strip out your processes that don't need to be done. Take them away. Simplify your business as much as possible. It's really important that HR are present. They're in the business world, they're there with the business. There's no HR and business, they bleed into one. And it's working together of unlocking and being really partners in what is being delivered. So when we talk about product development, that could be any product, anything from a mobile app to maintaining a catalogue of images. There's a product, and that product is important that we understand what is necessary, in what speed we need to react, and enable the business to do what they need to do. So that's kind of a little bit about digital in its effect. And as I go into my new role, so I work for Condé Nast. Condé Nast is better known as a publishing house. They're the largest publishing house in the world, and most of you will know Vogue, GQ, Tatler, Vanity Fair, Self, Wired, Love. I could go on. There's many, many titles. And the publishing world, does anyone work in publishing? Fabulous. So you'll know that there's perhaps this print and digital balance right now. And the allure for me was that I set it all up at Adidas, and I loved the journey so much more setting up than actually getting to the destination. Because when it was all running beautifully, well, beautifully is a strong word, I'm not sure that it's ever finished. The journey is a continuation. But I think I'm excited by disrupting an industry that so desperately needs disrupting. And it's not just me. I can stand here and talk about me, and it's a privilege to do that. I don't get to do it very often, and it feels a bit weird, but I'm doing it. But it is around what is the future in publishing. And I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know exactly, but I know that I can take my wisdom and I can take my experience and drive forward. And there's going to be a team of us that do that. So my next task is to build a group strategy globally for the digital community so that we can make that switch in publishing. So I'm kind of conscious, where am I on time?
Doing well, I think. 5 minutes?
Oh, fabulous. Okay. So
We'll do Q&A as well.
So we'll maybe draw in some Q&A. So I really, to help you guys or to share knowledge with you, I can't teach you digital in 10 minutes or 6 minutes or 7 minutes. And I will be available for to speak one-to-one. And my hope is that in a few years, I'll leave the corporate world and be available to consult and do what I love doing, which is help people move forward. And I think that digital really is, if you want a career accelerator, anyone, go and work in digital. It will push you. It will demand everything that you've got, including your patience and your resilience. And I would say that the biggest thing is be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up, because you don't know everything and you're not going to know everything. There's new ways of working, new technology that's coming up everywhere. I mean, it's impossible to know where your candidate tracking system, your HR system, your performance system, I mean, all of these things. I'm looking at onboarding apps right now. Has anyone got a fabulous onboarding app they can tell me about? Because if you do, come and speak to me, because I'm looking at those right now. And I built one at Adidas, but that doesn't mean to say that it's fit for the new company. So when I started the conversation around what does digital mean for you guys, it's going to look differently in each of your organisations, because one shoe does not fit all. I've worked with Google, with Apple, with Burberry, with many brands around their thinking, design thinking of their organisation. No one's got it right. And I don't suppose I've got it right either. So I definitely know that in myself, holistically, I'm much more open to change. I used to absolutely be shit scared of asking for a board presentation 5 days in advance. Now I can do it in 5 minutes and it doesn't faze me. No sleepless nights. So it demands something of you, which is don't look for perfect, look for good enough, right? It's don't go for just it's got to be seamless and beautiful and everything buttoned up to the, forget that. It's about speed. Get it good enough, be able to live with it and say that the journey is on. We go, we tweak as we go along, and that's okay. So there's an uncomfortableness that if you haven't experienced it, that will happen. But it's okay. Just go with it. So I think that I'd love to open up to some Q&A if that's okay. So anybody, fire some questions at me.
Yeah. AI is making a big impact on HR and everything.
Yes.
And a lot of HR people are suddenly having to be very strategic, where it wasn't the key thing that they had to do beforehand. So the coaching thing, how is everyone going to learn to get up to speed on things? Not in everything, but I think a lot of people feel like, wow, like overwhelmed by so many things happening at the same time.
I think I asked the chairman, I sat down with him this morning and said, Jonathan, he said, what have you done in the 3 weeks that you've been here, Zoe? And I was like, absolutely nothing. And I'm not going to do anything for 3 months. And he said, oh, well, why is that? And I said, well, because I need to understand the business. I need to understand it really intimately and know what your focus is as an organisation. Only then can I decide what the roadmap is in how to get there with the people side. So my answer would be focus. Keep it simple. Strip out the processes and practices that just don't serve well anymore. And I'm sure that if you really look at them, there's many in your organisation that doesn't need to exist. There's tools and tips and tricks that can do things faster, smarter, and make everyone's life easier. So it's really drilling down and asking the business. Don't take responsibility in HR. Ask the business, what's the priority? And then you'd say, I'm sorry, that's out of scope. Learn to say no. That's not in scope. We're not dealing with that now. Here's our roadmap for 12 months or 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's not easy to say no, but it is redefine. You want me to do that and you want me to do it good enough. I can't do that. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
I think one of the challenges from my perspective, when we talk about digital, so I've worked in a couple of industries recently, and the company spent hundreds of millions of pounds, and actually what's the result? We didn't actually communicate differently with our customer. We might be a bit better at selling things in a more digital way, and we might have changed some of the processes. I think the challenge now, so nobody's really grasped big data. Everybody talks about big data, thousands and thousands, but nobody's actually learned how to actually truly analyse that data and use it effectively. Regardless of what you hear in the news about QA and Cambridge Analytica and all the rest of it, if they could do that, companies have been trying to do that for millions of years and they still haven't achieved it yet. So, but my question is, I think AI, you mentioned AI. So I've seen a couple of presentations recently from Google, and that's quite frightening from a change perspective. I'm all right, I'm coming to the end of my career, but from a change perspective,
Yes.
Roles that I thought would not be impacted by AI, so solicitors, for example, they're actually saying, no, well, actually, that's not quite right. We can use AI to give probably option A, B, and C based on previous, court cases, information, etc. You choose the route that you want to go on based on the output from that. So roles that we all thought weren't going to be impacted by AI, that had a judgmental impact, I think actually are going to be. So what's your view in terms of AI as we move forward? I think this is going to be really interesting.
It's a great question. I don't know that I've got the full answer, but I can, from holistically, so how I work is very intuitive. I'm well developed in my career, as many of you are, and I think that we all have this intuition that comes along with our jobs, not just our technical expertise. Don't be afraid of AI. It's never going to replace human sensories. It's never going to feel and touch and have a kinesthetic partnership with somebody. We are attracted to, we're electrical beings. We are not going to ever, it's not going to replace all of us. But there is a place for AI that can make us really smart. Bots, if anyone's known of Sophie the Bot, if YouTube, Sophie the Bot, bots make mistakes because humans created bots, so we're never going to be flawless in it. But what we can do is that we can create great tools, like, for example, a live chat. So we can sit behind and have a bot, if you've got a HR service and your company is big enough to cope with a HR service, and you've got a global business, which now we're being pushed to have more global presence because we're online, it's having the thinking around how we react to it. So that would be beautiful. In recruitment, I see that there's a lot of value in having AI. And I don't think we know what we don't know. There are certain things that we're going to come against that is going to be, okay, well, that's uncomfortable. Do we want to do that? Don't we want to do that? At the end of the day, we are going to have to evolve somehow and some way because the speed is just not going to stop. So I think my view is embrace it, be afraid of it, be excited by it because it's something new, and we can also learn on that journey of how we develop as humans. But like I say, bots can't reflect, and they can't do something different because they can't reflect on it, a bit like animals. And we can't feel from each other. Bots are not going to have human connection like we have here. So I'm not sure it entirely answers your question, but I think my view is it's coming. There's one thing I encourage you to think about. Bots aren't new. We've been having them in engineering and manufacturing for some years, in cars, in all of that stuff. Bots in a different sense, but we've had robots. It's not new. So they're going to have a place and a space, but they're not going to take over the world, in my opinion. And that's not the view of Adidas, that's Zoe.
I think robotics is one thing because that's a continual response to a given input and logic. I think AI is slightly different because
Yes.
it learns.
Yes.
So when it makes a mistake and you tell it it's made a mistake, it learns by the mistake and doesn't do it again. And that's actually a capability that we have within our brain, which is a bit, so that's, I think we're going to really see it different.
Yes, and how far that reaches, I'm not sure. We're kind of overpopulated in our world, so I mean, there's really a lot to think about. I'd like to hope it's not going to happen in my lifetime, and we haven't got to worry about it. But it's a great question.
So I think it will happen actually in your lifetime.
Don't say that.
I come from more of a technology, digital CIO background, but I think the way of sort of differentiating is that all the very repeatable tasks that can be automated with logic built in. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I think that will. But you're right to say that the sensitivities of human interaction, I think humans are very good at is understanding the sentiment and what actually makes people tick.
Yes.
But I think that will remain.
Well, consumer marketing, if you think about consumer marketing, why do you cry when you see the RSPCC or a child line advert and there's a child that's mistreated or a pet or an animal, or what makes us when somebody has sharp words with you and it prickles you in terms of your emotions? Why is that? We have a response to people, things, weather, places that robots just won't have. The AI that will just never recreate. But I accept it's not the same. It's an evolution, and I was hoping it wouldn't happen in my lifetime, and then I haven't got to worry about it. No, but seriously, this is the things that I'm looking at now. Is what is out there. Tech shows, going to research, and like a phone, like a TV, like anything. The moment it's launched, it's out of date. So it's incredibly difficult to keep an eye on what's happening in the technology of our world. So that's a whole nother debate.
So where do you see leaders struggling with adopting digital, and how can HR best support and enable that transformation?
Very good question. So in Adidas, the digital community, the day that I was kind of put into the position of lead, there was 3 people. When I left 2.5 years later, there was over 1,000 people. So that growth is kind of steep. when you're in that journey, you don't think to explain it to others. So for the rest of the organisation, the other 65,000 people that don't know what's going on, it's incredibly frustrating. So there has to be a bridge with storytelling and a bit of PR attached to that, so that you're continually evolving people on the journey. The leadership thing, very interesting. I think that this is where coaching, I'll come back to it, creating internal pools of coaches is incredibly valuable. We have spent thousands, and I'm sure millions amongst us, on consultants, Deloitte, Bain, McKinsey, everything in between, external coaching. We just don't know what we don't know, so we're looking to somebody to give us the answer. The answer is in our own backyard. We've got the business savviness. We have HR, which are now more strategic than ever. I think that we have the tools and sometimes we just need a little steer to get there the right way. But there's a lot of change management that needs to be dealt with. And I dare say you can't call it change management, because the moment you do, your leaders go, oh God, here we go again. So it's wrapping it in a way that's a little bit more developmental and positioning and getting everybody, this collaboration piece. You cannot force, you can only excite, make people engaged and curious of what you're doing, and the leaders eventually will come to you. That's the way that I work. It's very intuitive, and the business might say to me, be quicker, I want you to be quicker, and I'm like, there's a journey that we have to go slower to go fast. And that's one of those moments. The transition of thinking, it doesn't happen overnight for people, and we will learn differently.
So I've got a final question for you. I think what I'm getting from all of the sort of this huge topic, we could talk about it all night, but what I'm getting is that your key message is whatever comes your way in a business, and lots of uncertainty will come our way as HR professionals, you're dealing with it with a lot of confidence and a lot of resilience. So do you have any tips for the people starting out in their careers or transitioning or coming up against this kind of change right now today? How do you build that confidence?
Yes, because it's not the future, it's here. We talk about it's going to come, it's here. So I think the biggest impacts for me is, I said I'm a forever learner. I'm curious about everything. I'm curious not just about professional, but personal. I've spent the last 5 years meditating the hell out of my life and spending a lot of time being with myself and my emotional state in a job and a career that's been extremely exciting, extremely rewarding, but comes with enormous amount of burnout. And this, I can only say to you, eat well, sleep well, balance, and I know that that's a word that we hear, try to balance your life, don't work too much, don't have fun too much, everything, or everything in moderation, because that's what's going to sustain you to get you there. And I can honestly say, being on the other end of being so burnt out that I can't work for 4 months is not nice. Every relationship gets tested. Your personal relationships get tested when you work in a very fast pace, because you don't want to talk to anyone outside of work. You're like, no, I don't want to talk to anyone. Don't touch me. Don't speak to me. Don't look at me. Well, that's how I was. And I think really to just continue to be curious, continue to dip your toes in everything that comes your way, but know yourself well enough to think when it's enough, when it's too much. So I think my main message is know yourself well enough in your tolerance levels, build your resilience, because that's what's going to take you where you need to go.
Zoe, thank you. I know you'll stick around for
So thank you very much. Thank you very much.